Death's Door is a gorgeous Zelda-like that I've been extremely excited for since seeing it in Devolver's E3 showcase. I was immediately drawn to Death's Door's gorgeous art style, haunting soundtrack, and snappy looking gameplay. I could tell at a glance that Death's Door would be my kind of game. From what we saw in the trailers, I was expecting Death's Door to be good, but it exceeded my expectations in every conceivable way. With Death's Door, Acid Nerve have delivered a remarkable and memorable adventure, and its excellent gameplay and writing that strikes the perfect balance between morose and comedic make Death's Door a serious Game of the Year contender. In Death's Door, you play as a crow who serves as an avian version of death, reaping the souls of those that are due to die. But when a former Reaper steals the soul of the crow, sending it through Death's Door, he's forced to gather the 3 giant souls that are needed to open Death's Door if he wants to reclaim his soul from the void behind the door where it now resides. What makes Death's Door so great is its excellent gameplay that understands that not overcomplicating things is often the key to satisfying gameplay. The crow's skill set in Death's Door is pretty standard action game fare, consisting of melee and ranged attacks and a dodge roll, with a grappling hook eventually being thrown in to spice things up by allowing you to quickly zip out of the way of danger and close the gap between yourself and an enemy in an instant. But it's the interesting way these mechanics are utilised in combat and for puzzle solving that makes Death's Door something truly special. Death's Door revels in its relative simplicity by forcing you to master all of the crow's abilities and know how to appropriately apply them to any given situation. Combat in Death's Door feels fantastic. Not only does it control flawlessly, but its fights are cleverly designed to keep battles engaging throughout, and the difficulty is balanced perfectly. As you slash, dodge, and shoot your way through Death's Door's varied and challenging array of enemies, you can really feel yourself mastering the mechanics. Death's Door's battles reward caution. You can't just go in button mashing, you need to observe enemies' patterns, looking for the perfect moment to swoop in and land a couple of hits. As you continue to explore, you'll find different weapons, each with their own pros and cons, though I found myself primarily sticking to the standard sword as it felt the most well-rounded, thanks to its nice balance of strength and speed. Combat can be mixed up by equipping different weapons, like the hammer, which deals more damage but is slower and can only be swung in combos of 2 strikes, or if you want to get weird with it, you can even fight enemies with an umbrella. Death's Door handles ranged attacks in a very clever way. In Death's Door, you can shoot arrows, cast spells, and throw bombs, but while these attacks are perfectly suited for many situations, your ranged attacks all cost energy to use, so you can only use them a finite amount of times before your energy is depleted. You then have to land hits with melee weapons to refill your ranged energy. This ingenious bit of design forces you to constantly be in the midst of fights, learning enemy patterns and looking for your opportunity to strike, which prevents you from just standing on the outskirts of battles peppering enemies with ranged attacks. One of Death's Door's best aspects is its boss battles. The bosses you encounter are visually interesting and perfectly designed to provide just the right amount of challenge to be satisfying. While I was never banging my head against the wall for several hours on a single boss like I sometimes would in a Souls game, it still took me a few attempts to learn each boss's pattern so that I could take them down. The 3 bosses who you acquire the giant souls from, in particular, are excellent. They showcase Death's Door at its absolute best and most creative. For example, the second of these bosses is a giant anthropomorphic frog called the Frog King, who shatters the ground with his attacks, limiting your movement. You can see a lot of Zelda DNA in the exploration, puzzle solving, and dungeons found in Death's Door. There's a lot of environmental puzzles that consist of things like using explosive plants and jars to break walls, and using levers and switches to unlock new pathways. There are also hidden keys that unlock doors, and you'll regularly spot areas that are currently inaccessible that you'll be able to revisit once you've gotten new abilities and tools like the fire spell or the grappling hook. While most of Death's Door's puzzles are fairly simple, and you're unlikely to be left scratching your head for too long, they're still cleverly implemented and fun to solve. Throughout environments, you'll also regularly come across seeds, as well as pots to plant them in. When you plant a seed, it'll grow fruit that fully refills your health. Once you've planted a seed, the plant will also remain there forever, providing a new piece of fruit again if you die and respawn. The games of Acid Nerve are unafraid to wear their inspirations on their sleeves. Their previous game, Titan's Souls, was heavily influenced by Shadow of the Colossus. Death's Door pulls different elements from Zelda, Soulsborne's, and Hyperlight Drifter, but refines and twists them enough to make them its own. Death's Door marks a huge step up in quality for Acid Nerve, because while Titan's Souls was a good game in its own right, Death's Door is on an entirely different level. One of the ways Death's Door draws inspiration from the Souls games is in the way you navigate its world. Exploring, you'll come across doors that once unlocked will become checkpoints, but you'll also be able to use them to instantly teleport to and from Death's Door's hub area, from which you can travel to any discovered location or spend souls gathered from killing enemies and finding soul orbs in the environment to strengthen the crow's abilities. The only gripe I really have with the gameplay of Death's Door is that occasionally it does a poor job of guiding you to exactly where you're meant to go next, which sometimes led to me just aimlessly wandering around until I stumbled upon where I was meant to go. Death's Door also deserves a lot of credit for its surprisingly funny writing. Death's Door is often quite morbid and humorous at the same time, and manages to toe the line between these two tones beautifully. I also absolutely love the art style of Death's Door. The environments are beautiful and the character design is exceptional. I especially love the design of the protagonist. The crow is just so cool looking. He's got one of those iconic character designs that you look at and immediately want on a t-shirt. The amazingly creative character designs extend beyond the crow himself though. There's enemies that are chess pieces, an NPC with a pot for a head, a giant witch who gave me major flashbacks to the witch from Spirited Away, and the first boss of the game is literally a walking castle. I also need to give a huge shout out to the fantastic piano score found in Death's Door. It's often haunting and somber, but it can also switch to being uplifting and triumphant to pump you up for a big fight. Death's Door is one of the biggest surprises of 2021. It's a delightful game that takes the moroseness of death and blends it with humour and absurdity in a very unique way, and its gameplay is simply sublime. This is right up there with Resident Evil Village and Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart as one of the best games of the year. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, or leave a comment. You can also find lots more videos on my channel, including my recent review of Scarlet Nexus. And be sure to stay tuned for my upcoming reviews of Marvel's Avengers War for Wakanda and Ghost of Tsushima's Iki Island expansion, as well as my recap and review for Gamescom Opening Night Live.